want to share a story with you if you would like to stay with me now. Challenge your attention span. I know it's already aching to leave, but I'm painting a mural right now for my parents, but this moment wouldn't have existed that I am living in now, that is freeing me, without a little girl's tears. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I was working at the summer camp in my parents' backyard, and it's called Last Chance Camp. And for the months of June, it's there, but Last Chance Camp always happens in August. And this year it was more of an opportunity for us because we were going to be paid more for working there. And at this camp, there was a little girl named Lola. And there was another little girl who, I have to be reminded of her name, but it's something like Ileona. And Ileona could talk to fairies. She knew how to communicate with the spirit of the fairies. She had a fairy garden at home, and she was raised in a way where she could communicate with them. So, Lola was at this camp, and the camp is very structured. There's morning greetings, then there's farm chores, then there's free play, and sometimes there's games. And it's all about occupying the kids' attention. And me and my siblings, I have 3 siblings, are all spread out across the camp. But me, I've always been a little mischievous. I think all of us in my family have that devil inside of us. Not in that evil way you think of when you think of the devil, but sometimes the thing that is screaming at you to break out of that cage, to flirt with life, to be mischievous. And that was the summer I turned 21. Now, I turned 21 in June, and I was given, with the help of my dad, there was this tax return, and it gave me $800. And I bought a hair necklace that I had pinned on my Pinterest, and I booked a trip to Santa Barbara using astrocartography. And when I was in Santa Barbara, and this was while I was attending school in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But for me, I like to celebrate my birthday, but I don't know, I've celebrated my birthday often with the wrong people. And so I think the way you celebrate your birthday is a spell. It tells you about the year to come. And as I'm changing, I think about the Roman calendar that we're trapped inside of because of colonization. How time is something that is controlled into weeks and into months and into days. And so to recollect the exact day you're born is only connected to a cycle of white man's time. So, but I still like to celebrate my birthday. I've always been interested in birthdays and the meaning of names. So for my birthday, I went to Santa Barbara. And I flew into San Diego. And I went to Santa Barbara because my astrocartography lines told me that if I went, I would connect with my Venus energy. My beauty, my essence. But what is Venus? Is the question I'm sitting with. So I went to San Diego and I flew into San Diego and I took the Amtrak to Santa Barbara and I stayed at this hostel and I was so anxious. I didn't know how to talk to anybody. There is a man working at the hostel older than me, and there was something about him that seemed like he could read minds. And there was a girl around my age, and there were lots of guys, and there were lots of people, but I didn't really tell anybody it was my birthday. I didn't really know how to engage with people or enter a group. So I spent most of it alone. I walked to the beach, I walked all over the city, I got in the water. And then on my birthday, I spent most of the money. I got a massage. I bought a dress, or I had coffee at a Turkish coffee shop. That's the next day. I scheduled a trapeze class for the next day. But on my actual birthday, I don't think I went in the ocean at all. I couldn't give myself that. But I bought a joint. And and the weed was shitty. It was shitty fucking weed. And I bought this dress. It was this pink dress, and I love the lingerie slip look. And I have a curvy body. I don't always quite know what to do with it, and I don't dress modestly. I stopped wearing a bra years ago. I don't know if I was growing out my armpit hair yet. And I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. But I found this slip and often I bought clothes that I wanted to be me, that I wanted to look like me, that I wanted to be expressed as me, and they weren't. They didn't fit on my body right. I felt uncomfortable, and often in a few months I would have to give them away. And normally I thrifted. This reminded me of the friends I had in high school for a moment. And on my actual birthday, so I get this pink dress with this lace, And it's the perfect color, and it looks so pretty on me, and it fits me perfectly like a glove. And I still have that dress. That dress, I dyed it blue. I dyed it like this eggplant, and it's soon gonna be this royal purple like my nails. And then the next night I went into the ocean. The next day was a crazy day. The next day the next day, or on my birthday, I had a senior manuscript for my poetry class that I had to write. It feels like so long ago. And I had this structure, I had this story I was gonna write. And it was based on a poem I wrote called Troubled Emotions. And it's about a girl. It's about being born in the body of your mother and knowing what lies beyond, knowing the cruelty of the world. Knowing the cruelty of the world. Knowing all of it. And refusing to lose touch with that. And kind of becoming seen as the monster because you won't conform to polite society. Because you can look the evil in the eye and see it for what it is. And so on my birthday, I was sitting on the bus and this guy walks by. And I start shaking. And they say sometimes that people meet angels. My angel was a 28-year-old whose name now follows me in the most mischievous ways. And we had a beautiful conversation. And I wanted so much more than he would ever have given me. But I was lucky enough that he didn't take that from me, that he let me have it. We talked, and he loved his job. He loved his job more than anybody, I thought. He got high all day at work. He did this engineering stuff, which he explained in depth to me because I asked. And because I fucking asked. And I got bored halfway through because my brain was not putting the pieces together anymore. We talked. It was a great there were so many people on the bus. But, I'm not supposed to tell that story then. But I remember he said to me, you cannot, something along the lines, stories, they change and memories change. But I was talking about the ocean and being in the ocean. And he said to me, or the whole essential point of the conversation was, why not dive right into life? If you're going in the ocean, you can dip your toes in and then dip your body in and then dip it all. But I don't feel connected to the ocean until my head goes under. And I'm somebody, my whole life, I felt connected to the water like nothing else. I'm into astrology. No water signs in my chart. Saturn. Saturn. But I grew up near this river, and as a kid, my family would go to this river, and I would fight them on going to the river. I did not want to go to the river. I did not want to give up my time. It was my time to fucking do something. I would have meltdowns. I would have reactions to things because I was afraid of time and resources and control. And nobody understood me. I didn't understand me. I was very misunderstood. And there's a beauty to that now. That I see it now as protection. And I'm grateful for it. Yeah, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for who I've turned out to be. But once I would go in the river, everything would lift off of me like it was nothing. And the ocean's different. But the river is something. And maybe we have moments in our lives that are so beautiful that we think are going to continue forever and ever and ever. But because we live in a colonized world, they say we can't have that 100% of the time. And then we have to give our lives to something else. But our lives are precious. Every moment of our life is precious, and we're taught to buy into this life that is only sustained through somebody else's labor, through somebody else's slavery. I don't want that life. I don't want that life. And yet I'm not even experiencing the cruelty of it. So when I was in the river, though, I was reminded of something ancient in me, something effervescent, something alive, climbing on the rocks, climbing into them. It challenged me, and it brought this thrill and this rush that nothing manufactured has ever beat that feeling for me. I felt like I could die in the river and that would be okay, that wouldn't be some tragic loss, that I would get to be with this entity, this spirit that I loved. And yet I'm looking at I was so rigid. So I'm in Santa Barbara, this boy, and we're smoking on a school bus, and he just really let me talk. And sometimes you meet somebody and all you're supposed to have is one conversation with them. And that is the most beautiful thing the relationship could be, is what that conversation was. And sometimes I have an issue with letting strangers too close to me too quickly. So he has to kiss me. I couldn't do it. I had never kissed anybody before, and I didn't know. And so I go home on the bus and I'm replaying everything in my head, hoping he'll text me. He never did. And I get it. I totally get it. But when I was sitting on that school bus, I remember looking at these windows and feeling like I was seeing this future, seeing it like a different country or something. I ended up in those different countries. But I came home and I was kind of lost. After that, I came home to my parents' house and I felt kind of lost because I felt like for a brief moment I had glimpsed myself, I had experienced myself connecting with the world, and now I was back in this place that I didn't understand how to be in. I'm from a family of 6. I'm the eldest daughter. And my family's lived so many different lives. And I don't remember most of them. I don't remember a lot of my childhood. Sometimes it opens up to me in memories, but I remember some of the feelings I felt in childhood. And in some ways I need to forget so I can keep living. So I came home and I was gonna create this vision board. I'd been which for a while, it found me. It found me, and my slowness in life has been one of my greatest blessings. But you're wondering about the little girl crying. So, I come home and I'm lost and I'm scared, and I'm gonna create this vision board, and I have just gotten the ability to purchase my own weed. So, that's what I did. And I think, no. It's crazy how when you start thinking about stuff, you start to see how the stories play into each other, how they weave together. So I was feeling lost. I was feeling scared. I was feeling alone. In fact, the school year before, I changed my name to Serafina. So everybody had been calling me Serafina. But I started working at my parents' camp again, and the name sounded awkward in my mouth. And I missed my old name. I missed the name I was born with, Annabelle. So, is there's something about the quality of that name. Everybody in my family has like top 100 baby names, except my sister and I. My sister has a very classic, strong name that came to my mother in childhood. But that wasn't my spirit, that was her spirit. And my name, I was maybe gonna be Madeline. Yeah, this connects to this story. My name is gonna be Madeline or Catherine. And growing up, I kind of but my family ended up living in Scotland for a period of my life, and they knew somebody in Scotland who had a wife named Annabelle, and the way he talked about her, that's how they found the name. Through the way from somebody else talking about somebody they loved with the name. And I've been told my name has many meanings. Gracious beauty, Belle, beautiful, Anna, gracious. But I looked it up, and the name actually means lovable. And how great is that? Like, lovable. And my middle name is Hope. And my last name, I'm not going to tell you that because I don't want you taking my identity. But my last name, I looked up the symbolism of it. It's connected to the yew tree. And the yew tree is a tree that when its branches break can regenerate. And I think when you find connection with names and stories, it pulls you out of this world we're forced to live in, and it awakens those memories deeper than everything. And so I come home from California, and I'm sad over this boy. And I'm sad. I was like, he's the love of my life. He was like 20. He's thinking, you're 21. You don't know what the fuck you want. Which was obvious now in hindsight. Like, because he had life ahead of him on the tracks. And I had like, all starry-eyed. And so, but he told me that I needed to write. And sometimes I'm very lucky with the kind of attention I can receive, because so many guys say things to get into a girl's pants. And probably he was saying those things. probably, but he was willing to have a conversation with me, and he was willing to see me as I was. Maybe not completely, maybe not everything, but how can you for a stranger? But we had a beautiful conversation, and he told me I needed to write, and he told me I needed to do these things, and I don't even know. I'm incredibly inconsistent. It's one of my flaws. It's something that I get in my own way. Me and my old head get in my own way. But also sometimes that's the blessing. Sometimes there's a magic in timing that you don't understand. Why you're dragged back to a certain place, why you're dragged to a certain place. Like, I watch a lot of TV. And if you think I'm losing track of the story, I'm not. I watch a lot of TV. So I watch a lot of character arcs, and I'm not a movie person. I have some movies I like, but I am a television person, and I love television because the question builds. You get to know the character. It's not like some hero's journey arc that's confined to 90 minutes. It's a journey, and then sometimes an actor has to leave the show, or a writer strike happens. A TV show has more space for life to happen and to interfere with the story. Somebody gets fired, so their vision for the story never gets fulfilled. And the actors, I have so many TV shows I love. I have so many TV shows I have loved and held dear. I am watching Devious Maids right now. I finally figured out how to watch like some shows I was never able to access, and I kind of think that to me is incredibly exciting. So I get home, geez Louise, I get home, I had this vision board. I'm like, what am I gonna create? And I loved YouTube tarot readings, love them. Then I got hooked on the TikTok readings, and I know. But I have certain readers who were very meaningful for me, and I didn't have a voice in my life. I didn't have a physical person in my life who I could speak to. So I had these voices over the internet that sometimes they would say the perfect thing, and it is so strange because when you start to make videos, you're like, when you watch videos and somebody is responding to your every cue in your head, you're like, of course, duh, obviously. You're arguing with them in the comments, whatever, or you're listening to them, and it's like how they can capture attention. But then when you're making the video, there's nobody else there. It's just you. And so it's kind of magical and kind of insane. So I am a woman led by interest. So there was a reading that said you could figure out how to manifest your dream life. But I'm the kind of person who's never had a dream car. I've never had my own car. I was lucky. I didn't have to pay for my own college. I'm a college dropout, though, at the moment. That I never had my own car. And so in high school, I would walk. And recently I got upset with my parents because my siblings had a different level of access to vehicles and transportation. And after I got upset and had that conversation with them, it was one of those situations where I was kind of getting upset about it's just a lot going on. Something pulled me back. It was like, because across from my high school there was a park across the street. And that park across the street kept me from committing. Because I've struggled with suicidal ideation. And that was part of the story I wanted to write in California, is going from that state where you're so hopeless about life. And I learned about suicide from from watching a documentary about the Dust Bowl with my mother. And it was this thing where they were exploiting the earth so much. They didn't learn how the earth worked. They just forced their machinery on the earth. And so it caused this reaction. And dust was getting everywhere, and people had to flee, and then people were discriminated against in California for fleeing from the Dust Bowl. And it's interesting that California is seen as a progressive place, but there's a certain kind of thing that views itself as elite for being progressive, and so classism. They're not actually progressive. So the Dust Bowl, there were women who were so sad, who were so lost, who were so forlorn that they couldn't see a future anymore. All they could see was this dust. All they could see was this destruction. And so they killed themselves. They committed suicide. And then I had an event happen in my life that made me want to commit suicide. And it was from a person who I enjoyed being around, but I never fully trusted. And the way I reacted to that kind of made me a social pariah. And kind of made me try to force myself into molds so I could be loved. And so something in me wanted to die, but something in me wanted to live. And something in me didn't want to live this life that I was being told was the only life that could exist. Like, your vision for love can't exist. Your vision, humanity can't be like this. It can't be like that. You're unrealistic. You're idealistic. You know? But everything's so wrong. Everything's so wrong. Everything's so racist. And people are dying because of that. And the earth is dying because of that. And I'm expected to go to college and study something and figure out how to pay my own bills and do all of this. But then what will happen to me? Because if I do what I'm told, the thing in me that is clawing to get out will still be clawing to get out. And so dream car, dream house, dream penthouse, dream closet, dream friend group. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? Those aren't my dreams. You know, I'm somebody who, what I have wanted from a young age is just to be myself and for everybody else to be themselves. And I had to learn that wealth and privilege and whiteness and classism and sexism and queerness and fucking everything gets in the way of that. And then also ancestral. Who your ancestors were, the decisions they made, what they dissociated from. And I had an ancestral reading when I was about 20. And I liked this reader. She's powerful. And she's so well researched. She was like, it all started with men in boats. And this collective disassociation we go through during this period. And now I'm kind of having some personal thoughts. But there's collective dissociation, and then there's the people who have been... It's so funny, we have these platforms. We have these platforms where we can share videos, but we can't say words. They censor us, you know, you can't say what happens when somebody wants to have... Can't even say sex, can you? You can show pornography, you can show kissing, but can you talk about rape? Can you talk about the fact that white people raped black people and forced them to breed? And that everything has been built off of that. Everything has been built off of the sickness that white people spread. I remember learning about Europe in school, and Europe was running out of room, and people were getting sick in Europe. In fact, we even had the Black Plague. And I don't know if we've ever had a society, especially as white people, where we knew how to process shit. Where we knew how to process shit and let it sink in instead of going about our days trying to continue this grab for power and keeping our race to survive or whatever the fuck. Like, I think about... I got sexually assaulted last summer on August 11th. Tomorrow's August 10th. So it's a year coming up on that. It happened in Italy with a British boy. And the experience was initially consensual. I don't think I was in a place really to fully be aware of what I was doing. It was incredibly impulsive. But then what he did to me in that experience, I ended up disassociating. My first time being intimate with somebody, and I was feeling sick and ashamed and disassociated. And I thought about every single person who's gone through that, whose their own body could not be theirs. They could not make the decision over their own body because somebody else thought they had the right to deny them resources, to deny them fucking anything because of their... Everybody should be able to decide what happens to their body. Everybody should have water. Everybody should have food. What is the point of technology? What is the point of this expansion if people don't have that shit? There isn't. And so I got this reading on my phone that said, you can have what you want, but you're not gonna choose that. You're not gonna choose that. I went to the back and I got high. This is when I was 21. And I came back to my room and I started drawing on the poster in a trance. And I saw a man's face. I went to a Waldorf school. You know, the story is valuable. I'm looking at the time, but this story is valuable. And I watched the OA recently, and then I watched Sense8. And I loved both of them. I've even heard the OA is coming back. And I think it is fascinating that it disappeared and that it potentially is coming back. Kind of shows the show's an entity in of itself. So, and as she's talking to these people and she's telling the story of how she was abducted and where she goes, and there's some Reddit forums and theories that she just made it up to cope with her trauma. And right now I'm kind of feeling like her in some ways. She thought there were these dimensions and these things, and the story she told was so unreal, but it's better to watch the story and not think she's crazy or sick, but to let your mind be bent in that way. That's what I think. Instead of having to cling to this reality. And my family moved to Colorado when I was 5 years old. It's where my dad's side of the family was from. And my dad's side of the family, like the yew tree, his mom was very young. She was 21. She was 21 when she had her children. And it kind of makes me want to talk to my dad's mom. I don't have much of a relationship with her. And in some ways, I've kind of shut her out because she's a Trump supporter. She's married to a Trump supporter. I don't know if she would be that way if she wasn't married to the man she's married to. But I don't want to let somebody in who has those thoughts about life, who sees that man. But then there's also the fact of talking to somebody sometimes can shift them, but then I put all of that expectation on myself. And it's like, am I engaging with a beast I shouldn't touch? That's how I got assaulted. I knew he was dangerous. I knew he was dangerous. I caught how he lied about everything, and I tried to convince him not to. And instead, I let myself get carried away into his world, and I ended up giving him something that I had been saving for years. Because part of me just wanted it done. Part of me wanted to not be a virgin anymore. To not have that hanging over me anymore. And then it became an incredibly violent event. You know, he didn't punch me, but every way he touched me was violent. And maybe if he was here, he would have said I liked it. I didn't like it. But I let him keep going, and I said yes. And I played along, which is a fond response. Jeez, I was talking about my dad's side of the family. And so, when my dad's side of the family, the question comes out of when you've crawled your way out of survival and you've built a life for yourself, do you still feel that every day? Are you able to breathe? Or do you still, that unexamined shit, that ends up becoming your child. And what you thought you could give your child, what you thought you could protect your child from, you've given them everything material. And then here comes a child who the material doesn't know what it's like to go without the material, but in some ways does. Wasn't taught how to brush her hair, wasn't prepared, and was unruly and wild and thought that she could keep going like that forever. Like Taming of the Shrew. And I've seen this post on TikTok about how in a lot of shows there are like these rebellious older daughters like Haley Dunphy and all these women who don't want to get pregnant, and then by the end of the series they get accidentally pregnant and they become a mother. And what would their journey have been like where are the stories of them not becoming mothers, of them becoming themselves? And I don't want to center. And I've been thinking a lot about being a white woman. And how dangerous white women are, while also collectively we're dangerous because we have social power and white supremacy, and yet white men have tortured us as well, and yet so many of us are allegiant to the captors and then become complicit in the torture of others, enjoy the torture of others because they themselves have been tortured, and then use the victimhood of being a woman to escape the accountability. And I think in one way they give us certain stories so we can dangle shiny toys, but then they have stories like the Testaments, which is based off of the trauma of black and brown women, and cast them in white bodies for the most part, occasional, and don't really dig into the racism, but to constantly go, we can take everything from you and turn you into our sex slaves. So it dangles there, and the fear never gets addressed, and they never get bitten. There was it's a Noah Khan song playing. So my parents were pastors. My dad was a pastor. To escape what he had been born into, my dad ended up enrolling at West Point. And West Point is seen as it's this Ivy League school of discipline, but the stories that are told as funny it's dehumanizing. It's given status through this process of dehumanization. Like, the first years have to serve all the seniors, and the seniors can say whatever they want to them and do whatever they want. And I don't think this was the case with my dad. My dad and I have a complicated relationship. And we've struggled with each other. But it's interesting growing up with a dad who is the stay-at-home parent, who cooks most of the meals in the house, who has the role of the housewife, and also the king. I think so many people probably don't know their father in the way I know my father. Even if there's a lot of grief there. Now, I went to a Waldorf school. And Steiner ideology is actually incredibly problematic. And I think, and the stuff that happened at that school, there was a lot of nice, we played an instrument, and we got to act in plays, and we got to learn about different mythologies. And I think it saved my mind from being captured, because it grew my imagination. And if I had been in the school system, I don't know if I would have had the knowledge in my head that made it easy to leave Christianity, that developed me into the person I am. But it's a problematic ideology. And a lot of kids around me were suffering in that environment, and a lot of adults were abusing their power. In fact, one of my teachers ended up turning out to be a predator, and that affected somebody in my family more than it affected me. But I was close with him. You know, he did. He would force me to hug him. He would force me to hug him. And one time he serenaded me with this song, Turn Around Bright-Eyed. And I thought that was strange. Kind of like he was flirting with a little girl. Like, it did seem like he liked to flirt with little girls. And so I kind of always knew what he was, but he would see my light, and nobody else would. I think that's sometimes how people get victimized. Because you can feel so alone, and then somebody comes in offering love. And when you're so alone, you'll learn, what's the expression, you'll learn to lick it off with knives. But we did form drawing in that school. And so I couldn't get the forms quite right, so I would always just be doodling them over and over and over and over and over again. And in high school, I met this person, and this person was my first real best friend in my queer awakening. And they're not in my life anymore. And it wasn't like being in love with the other person, but I watched her become her. And she was the first person I told that I was queer. She was the person who I told everything from. She was the person who would rescue me from my house. And then she was the person who abandoned me. She was the person who said I was like the mother she never had. You know, like, it kind of, we were very close, but then we ended up like playing into our family roles with each other. And I had to let it go. She gave me a tarot card reading once that was like, what are my gifts? And one of them was like my ability to be disliked, my ability to say the things I do in the way I did. And I didn't like hearing that. You know, I wanted to be told that I was beautiful, like stunning, effervescent. You know, like I wanted everybody to clamor to me and be like just seen and But I was told my gift was being disliked and the fact that I drew. She looked at my art and she went, that. So here's the story. So I started drawing these posters. I bought the $5 posters from Walmart, Target, and the Crayola markers. And I would have words come into my head, and I'd have words and phrases, and they all had different stories, and I just let them flow through me. And I just kept doing that. So I was working at this summer camp, and I was feeling depressed again, and I was feeling scared about life again, because I was doing all this stuff for college, but the life I was told, like, I wasn't doing the steps to actually make a life after college materialize for myself. I was just trying to bide my time where I felt confident enough to dive into the water. Like the guy said, you know, I was dipping my toe in, you know, I was cutting glass to talk to the trees. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I was cutting glass to hug trees. And to know, and I'm sure that doesn't make sense to anybody else. You had that opportunity, why would you do that? ended up creative writing in college. And I was like, I'm not a writer. I'm not this. I'm not. But it was the collaborative process of that class that I loved. It didn't materialize into a degree for me, but I wouldn't trade it. So I had these posters, and I was working this summer camp with my family. And I was confused about life, but I love kids. Because I'd spent like the past few years trying to remember who I was as a kid and giving myself permission to be her again, because she could leap into things. She could just do things, and me, I overthink everything to fucking death. She could just make shit happen. There was one time where I wanted to raise money for Haiti because and my mom was like, no. And I said, I'm leaving without you then. I'm leaving without you. And she was like, oh fuck, my child's leaving without me. And I didn't leave the block, and I made $500. Like, that will I had and what it could just create because I leapt. And then I became incredibly complacent. And that's connected to so many things. But I felt ashamed of that. And I was like, what happened? You know, that child did not think this was the life she was going to be living. That child. When I went from like being so hopeful to wanting to die, it was awful. And if you're watching this, you don't have to sit here and feel bad for me. I've done enough of that for myself. I've sat here, I felt bad for myself, I've cried my tears out, I have my spirit guides, I have whatever. I share it so maybe it sparks something in you. So maybe you start to remember that child in you. So you start to think, what does my name mean? Where do I come from? Where am I being complacent? Where am I ignoring cruelty in the world? Why am I giving into this life? I know not everybody has that choice. I know I am lucky enough where I have the resources, where I'm unemployed and I'm not homeless and I can buy coffee now and then. Like, that is a fucking blessing in this time. But I also know I'm in a home with my parents still feeling like a child and being incredibly scared of that. And realizing you're an adult, you have to. But, you know, what in you is clawing to get out? And if it's hatred towards other groups of people, then you need to sit with your fucking self and not inflict that onto them. If you're feeling insecure about yourself, that is not, unless it's towards like white supremacy, unless I'm talking to white people specifically when I say that. I'm not talking to people of color. You know your experience better than I do. I have not lived that experience. I do not have that wisdom. I have not lived that life. I do not know the ins and outs of that. I am only, and I wear the skin of the same people who have inflicted this violence and this hatred over and over and over and over again. Over again, and you deserve the world. You know, you deserve the world that was stolen from you, and you deserve that. So these posters and I created these things. And from what I felt like was nothing, something started to come to life in my hand, from my hands. So I was working at this camp and we had these porta potties and you had to watch the kids at the porta potties. And my artistic style is very based in color. See, there's my sense of morte painting over there. It's all color. And so I would color with the kids in the craft thing, and I liked that. And what I like about kids, and why I like to be around kids, is I don't want the same thing. That I know they're gonna go through the same thing, where their souls are new here. Their souls are new here to this planet, and different kids are forced to realize different things, but they're under the control of adults. And they have these impulses and they act out in certain ways, and some kids can be really cruel. And adults aren't attuned enough to the children. We're so... Like, I was a child who had loving parents who cared about me, but who really hurt me. Because they were confused by me. They didn't get me. They were trying to, but they weren't listening. They kept fighting it instead of letting whatever was happening reveal something beyond both of our comprehensions. Kids are so smart. You know, kids are told to be one way because they need to be a certain way for the world, but if we had a world where people, everybody, and all kids of all colors, did not have to deal, were able to thrive and flourish and trust the adults around them and become whoever their soul felt like they were. And I was babysitting this one kid, and he's super sweet. Recently, he's super sweet. I love babysitting for him. Even if I find it exhausting. I find it exhausting having to be the one to keep up with a kid at all times. But he's so loved by his parents, and I just was thinking about all the kids in Gaza who don't have, like, are being bombed, who could have all these loving parents, but that could all be stripped away, whose everything is being stripped away from them. And Israel is, you can't speak up against Israel. Well, you can, but you're punished severely for doing so. But they're committing a genocide. They're trying to erase one of the oldest cultures on earth, one of the most beautiful cultures of earth, and claim it as theirs because of their religion, because their God promised it to them. That doesn't make sense. And it's off of the back of the trauma of the Holocaust. So they're using that trauma. And I am not Jewish. So I don't understand. I've not been personally impacted by the Holocaust in that way. But it wasn't only the Jews who were in concentration camps. It was queer people, it was disabled people, it was Romani people as well. And yet this collective trauma is only highlighted upon one group, and even Israel itself does not have respect for the Holocaust victims. The Holocaust museums are complicit. Everybody who is victimizing Israel is complicit in a genocide. and all of our media, everything. It's all completely unreliable. All of it. That would be scary. So, I was at the park, like maybe 1 month. I want to say back in May. I was at the park. And I was just watching people. And I was watching this little boy run and play, and I felt so weird to be a stranger in front of this child. Because I was like, of course, I'm a stranger. They wouldn't know if I'm safe or not. But these kids can't grow up in a world where they can interact. The people around them are not able to really acknowledge that they're there. You know, how are the kids of today going to grow up in the future? With everything around them, because they're surrounded by this dysfunction of adults. And really the solution is reparations, but the solution is, as corny as it sounds, is love. And love is not just light. Love is not light. Love is screaming, love is crying, love is letting that rage be expressed of what has happened in this world. Because why are we insisting on continuing? What are we continuing? What are we continuing? We should all be stopping and screaming. Instead of trying to be, we should all be stopping and screaming and pulling the people in charge off of their pedestals, because who the fuck are they? The government, the royals, all of these systems of power are sex trafficking and human trafficking. Why are they telling us what to do? Why are we listening to them? They're fucking idiots. Because it's more comfortable for our insecurity? And I know. People get killed for trying just to simply live without conforming to their fucking rules. But children know. Children are not these idiots. Children sometimes know so much more than adults do. And yet they're tried to be modified down to adults. And the hope is always in the children to destroy a collective group of children. Because why? Why are we okay with children being casualties? Why are we okay with saying war is just something that happens? War is how we solve conflicts. There's a part of me that knows that's part of human nature. To fight, to kill, whatever. But we talk about how we're evolved and all of this shit and all of our technology, but if we're not past the point of killing each other, and it's like the wrong lives are being taken. And then all of these people in charge are the people who are attracted to do the worst things for children, yet they have all the power and all the resources, and they're the ones who are able to decide everything. That's why everything's as bad as it is. And because people are complicit. I've been complicit. And it's hard to say, but it's true. And I've been brainwashed There's so many layers of brainwashing. So, I want to finish the story for those who decide to stay. I was working the camp, and I had to go sit with them when they went to use the bathroom, and you'd have about 10 kids with you, and that can't be on my phone. Wasn't allowed to read a book, so I got a poster. I'd been working on, and the name of it was Surrender. Because I felt like there was nothing I could do but surrender. Surrender, because for me, I look at this world and I'm fucking disgusted. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted as a child. It's disgusting. When life is a beautiful, sacred thing. How fucking dare they? How fucking dare they take people from their homes and lock them in rooms and don't give them fucking water because of their boundaries? We're the invaders, mind you. So many white people specifically would not be alive if the Americas had not been taken. Because we were also going to get sick again. I remember learning in school, and I had decent history teachers. A lot of my history teachers were women. Women who were angry about what had happened. And women who treated the cultures with the same respect. One of my favorite history teachers, Miss Furet. I think she, like me, had been born in a very Christian, conservative thing. And I think she might have been gay as well. I'm not sure, but she owned a restaurant on the side. But she taught about all the cultures with love and with respect, and those teachers, they didn't let the bigotry slide. One teacher, Miss Hall, and she was the kind of teacher who could let it seem like it was getting out of control and then pull everybody back like that. But we still learned about, I'm forgetting, the Columbian Exchange. How we brought this to the Americas, and we got corn and tomatoes and all of these fruits and all of these vegetables, and how our sicknesses decimated the indigenous population. It was actually because of the diseases we carried that we were able to win. Not the military, not the weapons. The population was decimated, and then the weapons were able to clear out what was left. People signed contracts that they didn't understand because that wasn't from their world, and that's not how business was done. But if Europe had never tasted corn, never tasted tomatoes, the population was growing, what would have happened to all of those people? Who would be alive today? You know, so many of us are only alive because of this sickness. And Puerto Rico has no water right now. Black people are being lynched, hunted by the fucking police in Jackson, Mississippi. I don't know all their names. I know Tasia Fortune, Nolan Wells. I think she happened at the beginning of August, and Nolan happened at the beginning of July. And then there was a young black girl with epilepsy whose white friends poisoned her with alcohol and then beat her senseless. How fucking dare you? You little bitches. You little cunts. Like, I hope your skin rots off your face. I hope you never sleep in a moment of peace. I hope your hair falls out of your fucking head. I hope what you wish to inflict on her becomes your everything. So I let the kids work on the poster with me. I still have it. I spent the week letting them work with the poster, and so instead of going with my dad's schedule and everything I thought I was supposed to do and being good, I had the poster with the kids. And there was this little girl at camp named Lola. I love the name Lola. It is a beautiful name. But she had such sad eyes. She was like just a little thing. But she was always crying. And everybody else was so frustrated with her. We're doing the thing. Lola's crying. Lola doesn't want to do it. Lola's crying. Lola's crying. Lola's crying. And I would just sit with her. And there was the other girl with the fairy, and I just kind of let myself be invited into their world. And it was nice. It was nice. So right here where we're sitting, it was about right here. Actually, it was a little further down. It was like right here. Lola's sitting here. And she's crying. I sit with her. And somehow, we start building a fairy garden. And the other girl who helps with the fairies was kind of our communicator. And so I brought all my spell stuff from in the inside, and I had bought in this like strawberry oil, this strawberry spell oil. And so I was giving all the herbs to this girl, and she was telling me which ones the fairies liked and which ones the fairies didn't like, and what I could bring as like offerings to the fairies. She had this very regal presence. Well, I looked up what the name Lola means, and the name means sorrow. Such a beautiful name. You would not expect it to mean sorrow, and to name a child with the name Sorrow. It's connected, I think it's connected to La Lorna, who is, I don't know much about this. I'm no expert, I'm a novice. But she is a Spanish wailing woman who I believe like drowned her own children or something. Grief is just stuck wailing for eternity. Well, the girls left. I don't know where they are now. I had this poster with the kids. I hung it in my college apartment. I had a roommate who let me get away with so much. Bless her. We were good. We're no longer in contact, but she found her people. I think she found her people, and she found her person. Yeah. I'm happy for her. I'm happy for them. I love when couples come together and it's just like, it seems like they're genuinely in like, I love when two people come together and their souls are good for each other, you know? because when two souls come together and allow each other to be souls, you know, not my boyfriend, not my girlfriend, not these rules, not these structures. I understand why people have that to protect themselves. But, and not necessarily a merging, but like, when you have somebody who recognizes your soul and wants to build a life with you where they can be their soul and you can be that soul, and it's a life that can go together, that is so powerful. And I don't get, or I can get, but yeah. And someday I hope that finds me. That has been one of my greatest wishes for as long as I can remember. But I'll show you the fairy garden. So, my family was so annoyed about this. They were so annoyed, and everybody was kind of mad at me. First, they were angry with me because I was just frolicking with the kids while they were working. And I didn't feel bad about it. I had one of the best weeks of my life. I had a great time with the kids. And I also didn't get why everything needed to be as stressful as it was. I was like, okay. So I thought they were going to destroy the fairy garden because I have permission to do it. It just kind of happened. But the fairy garden got moved. And I brought like all my old spells out there. Brought everything out there. I just brought so many things to it. And eventually, I'll show you, come on. Okay. Forgive my filming. A wall got built around it. It got protected. When you walk in, okay, it's hard to do with my camera to like flip shit around, so maybe I'll insert a clip because I know how to do that. I went to TV. I took TV and video. I've watched, no, this is a different conversation. So there's these trees, and then down here it's dark, you can't see. There's a fairy garden. So it took on a life of its own. It became its own thing. And now it's here. And so I got lost. November, I wanted to figure out how to do things my way. I learned about astrology, but I think I have to work on decolonizing my perspective on astrology. I have, it's right here. I have Post-Colonial Astrology by Alice Sparkly Cat, who is my favorite astrologer. By some happen chance, I found their blog during COVID, and it helped me because it wasn't that surface level like sun sign astrology with all the placements, because there's sun sign astrology, but I think you can have sun sign astrology about the full birth chart as well. And I just read the intro to Post-Colonial Astrology, and they were talking about how astrology has actually been used as a tool for the right wing for the longest time. And I think about astrologers like Marin Altman, who are racists, who then use the tools to try to get in with the tech bros, the crypto boys like Elon Musk. You know, who acknowledges that astrology is real, who isn't. But I love astrology. I can channel with a birth chart. I can start speaking in metaphors for hours I have all these random skills that I wanna sustain my life through them, you know, but not exploiting them. You honoring those gifts and honoring that in other people. But figuring out like how to do that stuff without exploiting that. So, geez Louise. Now I'm really off track, but it's okay. Life is kind of so crazy sometimes. So I put my spells in here. Why the fuck did I start? Because I was over-explaining myself. So, I wanted to do all that. But instead, I applied for this job. And an hour later, I hear back. Next morning, I'm hired. I got a job in like 12 hours. After getting in a fight, oh my god. I think my aunt had visited or something. I read somebody's birth chart for them. And that went crazy. That's all getting back to astrology. Okay. Like, I wanted so hard. I got to a point where I wanted so hard to be normal. Like, I had a friend in high school, and her and I, we were so mischievous together, and I loved her. And probably I was in love with her, honestly. But when I was with her, I was meaner. And she was from a very Republican family. And I was kind of friends with her as she assimilated to that. And I had to leave. I'm queer, I'm neurodivergent, and those things mean something, but I know the fact I'm white. That's first. Why am I talking about her? Oh, so I was trying to fit into those molds, but I hated those guys. I thought they were idiots. But I couldn't speak their language, so they were smarter than me. You know, like, they would talk about immigrants, and I would be like, if people want to make a new life for themselves, they should be able to. And then they come up with like some bullshit crime statistics. Like, I remember one of them said the R word, and I had epilepsy as a child. I was almost severely, that was almost me. I had like a rare illness where, this shit sounds crazy, but it's true. Unless somebody's been lying to me my entire life. But in my awareness, this is the story I've been given and what I supposedly lived through. And this story is a whole different crazy story. So I told my friend that, and she was like, don't make me choose between you two. This is making me uncomfortable. And I think I just kind of saw her get consumed by that, and saw the person I care about choose that path of white womanhood and committing to that over who she was and what was inside of her. And that person I loved. I loved that. I'm somebody who has loved all of my friends. And it has been confusing, and it has been complicating, and it's been confusing in regards to my own sexuality, but that was not. My own sexuality is something I've just kept closed up because it's so sacred to me. Like, I can have feelings for somebody, but if somebody can't love me or be interested in me or be a safe space, it doesn't matter how I feel about you. I always feel exploited by the relationship at the end of the day. Like, I need something with true depth. because I can offer that. But I can't offer that if it's just me giving that, because then you become this pit of depth for something, and then you never see the other side of it, and eventually you just lose everything to it. And that's not love. That ends up becoming a savior complex or something, and it doesn't work like that. So, back to the story. There's a spider running around. I had this, like, when I was lost, it was like this magical language come out of nowhere. And probably some people will hear me speak and think I need to be medicated. I have an aunt who I adore more than anything on earth. And she has so many ideas, and she can connect with people unlike anyone I've ever seen. But she's never fully been able to be independent. And her kids bear the weight of that at times. And it's like I see this beautiful soul expressing things. Actually, some stuff in the fairy garden is things she gave me. But I see how everybody around, I just see the loneliness in that, and the pain in that. She's more Scorpio than anybody I've known. I have known a lot of Scorpio placements. I've been intense friends with some Scorpio stems, and it's so interesting because I have one friend who I've been thinking about her so much today. And I don't get why I'm thinking about her. Okay. Maybe I'll see her again soon. I don't know. She has no way to contact me, though, because my number has changed. But I've been thinking about her. I wanted to be her friend so badly. She did not want to be mine. But maybe I manifested her as my friend. Her mom loved me, though. Her mom loved me. And everyone else kind of fell away, and we came together. But then she kind of always chose everybody else over me, and I was like, this is my friend. Like, I was codependent, and she was avoidant. And that was hard for me, but also kind of necessary. But I remember one time she was like, you're one of the people I could spend the longest amount of time with. I thought, really? Because it was like every time I saw her with other people, I felt like that's when she would come alive. But I was thinking about that today, and maybe that's what being close to Scorpio sometimes is there are people who, like me, I'm a Leo moon. There's just this brightness. There's just this brightness in my emotions. I like when everything's bright. And that can be an issue sometimes. But Scorpio, they're fixed. They're water. And stagnant water can get sick. But stagnant water can be a lake and have so many depths. Like maybe to be close to a Scorpio is just to be somebody who they can sit in it with. So, yeah, the water signs get me. I've had a lot of Cancer friends, I've had a lot of Scorpio friends, and I've been hopelessly in love with a lot of Pisces. To my own torment. I think Virgos are really cool. I love Leos. Leos are the people I feel safest with immediately. I'm like, hell yes. Dated Libra for 10 days. Scorpio. I don't know many Sagittariuses. I like Capricorns, and I don't know many Aquariuses. Tauruses and I butt heads, and I have a lot of Taurus in my chart. But I'm a Gemini, so that throws them off every single time. So some of them are like Taurus with a lot of Gemini. But I'm off track. I digress. So, I love astrology. And that's something I've been realizing recently is that I've been I literally sometimes when I'm bored, I'll just go on Reddit and I will give people birth chart readings. And it takes like 3 hours of my time. And I've been doing it in the TikTok comments recently. But it's interesting. I think the way I see it is different. I think maybe I should write a guide or something like that, because I think astrology is something you can meditate in. It's something you can sit in. It's something you can feel. But I do think it's interesting that we're like, oh, Jupiter's your husband. Jupiter's luck. Zeus cheated on his wife. Jupiter's based on Zeus, and Zeus was not faithful to Hera. But it's interesting because many of the Olympians and much of the mischief in Greek mythology is because Zeus was a whore. But I was never really drawn to the ancient Greeks. Okay, sorry, that opened another thought tab in my head. But I started working as a barista. But that taught me a lot about boundaries, I think. I think it taught me a lot about boundaries, because you're expected to constantly perform, constantly smile at these people who see you every day. And it's like, what kind of relationship do you want with your barista? And it's like you're being rated on it based on how much you get tipped. So I got fired. And there was definitely some BS. My managers definitely did some stuff that I'm not cool with. Like, they definitely did some manipulative stuff behind the scenes. But I wasn't the right fit for that environment. I got fired. My last shift was the day before Chinese New Year. Year of the horse. But then I got really depressed. I started watching TikTok and I started watching everything that happened in the world, and I couldn't move. I know it's a privilege to be a white person and feeling like you can't move. Not getting it at all. And I was dependent on all these people, my family. And then a childhood neighbor offered me a mural. There'd been this strip by his house, like this strip on the side of his house. And as a child, he offered me to paint it, and I just never did it. So I had no money, and I was like, okay, maybe this is a way to do it. And he was like, well, I have a garage door, why don't you paint a mural? And he came over to my house, and I was so excited. And something in me told me not to tell people, but then I did tell people. And I think that's part of what caused it too. I was so anxious about Evil Eye. But suddenly, I had this opportunity, so I didn't have to get a job. And then, when I had come back from Europe, before I got in the job, I did house sitting. Oh, that's a whole different story. House sitting is a whole different story. And I don't want to talk about it too much, because that's kind of my profession at the moment. So that's a different story. But I had a feeling about it. I just kind of brushed it off. I was like, well. But then this spring I followed it up, because I got in a fight and I felt so stuck. And I found trusted house sitters. So I applied for a set. And then my family started talking about me. And I get very blessed through my family. I know not everybody has that. and I got some house sitting jobs because I had the time, and I house sit over my birthday, so I was able to have my birthday trip still in Colorado, but still kind of have that like escape. And the house sitting I was at, it had like a giant pink couch, and he had all these travel photos on the wall, and like a little, I don't know if you call it, but it was a travel altar, and it was like a match to me. I was like, wow, I'm a match to this house. And left me 5 stars, just so you know. But this mural with the neighbor, we had a contract, and then he raised the price astronomically. And I was like, wow. But I stalled on it. I had this feeling in my body. Some part of me didn't want to be around him. Some part of me did not want to do it. I was anxious about it, and I was like, I can't say no to this opportunity. So come July, I'm pet sitting for my aunt and uncle, and I had been avoiding it. And I find an email back from June where he lowered the rate so much. I emailed him back trying to negotiate, because he didn't acknowledge the fact that I'd asked for 15 per square feet, and he had encouraged me to charge up to 40 per square feet. But then in his email, he's like, you don't have any experience, you haven't done this before. I was saying, yeah, I know, but you told me to charge more, and you knew I didn't have experience then. And so through like, and he does this thing every year where he like spoils me and my siblings. I'm lucky to have that. But basically what happened was the mural fell through. The mural fell through, and he couldn't really acknowledge that he had led me on significantly. And I didn't take action on it, but when it fell apart, I felt relieved. I felt like I saw something real and saw something truthful. But I had drawn this woman. I had drawn this woman for him. I hadn't done much prep, but I had drawn this woman, and I thought she was really beautiful. I had painted her when I sent the email, because like not having the opportunity activated me. And I know probably in some of this shows a lot of my immaturity. But I traveled a lot last summer, and it was the time of my life. But I also got sexually assaulted. And that's a different story. And I've talked about it in the video, but today is the day where it was led me to meet him, because it was in the early morning of August 11th. And it's an eerie story. But why am I talking about my travels? Oh, but when I was in a place and I was about to leave a country for good, because I had a lot of false starts and a lot of delays, I would have uncanny full circle moments that could reference stuff that happened months in the past. Happened in Prague, happened in Italy, happened in Scotland. And like in Italy, my boyfriend at the time, which was a really profound experience for me, but I do think it would have turned into abuse if I had stayed, because he did a lot of things that were not okay, and he said a lot of things that were not okay. Like, he said he would kill me. He joked. He did a lot of things that I thought if I was in a relationship with a man and he did that, I would leave. And also, I wasn't sure if I was attracted to men. I'm still not sure about that, even though I know I've talked a lot about men. in these videos, I've struggled very deeply with comp het. If the wanting like the emotional connection with them, that's not always the same as sexual attraction. Feeling drawn to them and compelled by them doesn't mean I want them inside of me. You know, it doesn't mean I want to. And that's something I've spent a lot of time. I don't know. It's something I'm still on the edge of. But but back to the, we're gonna finish the story. So my full circle moment is I showed my parents the painting, and my dad said, "Oh," and I applied for a sit in a city I've always dreamed of going to. But I kind of knew I'd have to hope to get, I wanted more resources before I went. So I was hoping to do the mural before I went. But then the mural fell through. And my dad said, "I have work for you." He said, "Why don't you paint her? Why don't you paint a mural on the fairy garden?" So I've been filming the process of me doing this because I wanted to do it with the other one. And I'm happy it's here. Because this fairy garden, before I left for the house sitting, I housed it for my aunt and uncle for 2 weeks up in Boulder. And I had a different pet sitting job I was at. And I packed everything up. I packed my entire room out. I cleared it out like I was moving out. And I had some very beautiful objects. Oh man, my foot's asleep. Like this shell. Or this is a spell. This is an inner child spell I made in college before the fairy garden even existed. My junior year of college. I made this spell. I made this spell. I made a liberation spell, and I made a true self spell. And I put it in the fairy garden. There's a lot of items from my great grandmothers in here. There's a dead jade plant. There's a mortar and pestle. There's some ceramics I made in college. I just put kind of everything I couldn't take on the next journey with me, but that was beautiful, into the fairy garden. So when the mural fell apart, I was sad. I was sad, but I was relieved. And my dad said, "Why don't you paint the woman on the fairy garden?" And offered me the initial rate I gave my neighbor. I offered him $15 per square foot. I thought that was fair. It was reaching for something because I know my art style is incredibly unique and nobody can do it in the same way I do. Like, it's not just painting, it's mediumship. And I know many artists are like that. It's just like I weave color together and like. So I thought that was fair. And then he got me up to, and then he offered me 10. And I think if he had acknowledged it, but I was so happy, I didn't want something about the opportunity kind of didn't sit right with me. But I was scared. And my dad offered me the rate I was gonna initially ask him for, that I thought was fair, to paint it on this fairy garden. So I've been recording the process. Tomorrow is the last chance camp. The same yearly camp that is the reason why this fairy garden exists. I have this mural, I have this opportunity, and I've put these offerings into this fairy garden. I don't know what's next. But this moment only exists because Lola decided to cry in that moment. Because Lola decided to cry, and in her tears, she wanted to make a fairy garden. And now I'm sitting here 2 years later, and those tears that might have seemed irrational to everybody, that solution that might have seemed like nothing, might have seemed like her trying to get out of something or whatever, has now become a dream come true. Beyond. It's like, it's the full circle thing. I got offered an opportunity that was amazing, but it wasn't the right fit. But this mural, you know, tomorrow I'm gonna be able, I don't know if tomorrow, but I'm gonna be able to paint with the kids and create this around the kids, for the children, on this fairy garden. And I also think it speaks to the magical entities that are fairies. In some ways, Lola offered them this fairy garden. You know, we offer them that. And I honestly think if it was anything else, it would have been destroyed and taken away. And yet, it was given to. And then it ended up getting moved. And I ended up giving offerings to it. And then it ended up getting a wall to protect itself. And they're off right now in little doors, and now it's getting a mural. Like, that's magic. That, to me, that, I felt so lost. I felt so sad that I was pulled back. But now I'm here. Oh, and now there's a plane. It is flying so low. Oh, it's a drone. Is it a drone or a plane? I don't know. That makes such an ugly sound. But this is, if she had not cried in that moment, in that week, I felt like my life was gonna change, and then things ended up normal. But if I had not lived that week of my life in that way, if I had not surrendered then, I wouldn't have had anywhere to put my spell bottles. I wouldn't have had anywhere to put the old teacups. There would have been nothing. There would have been no space to offer those things. There would have been, it wouldn't have existed if I hadn't just drawn. If I hadn't done those things that I only did because it felt like in that moment there was nothing else to do, and it was the only thing I could reach for. I was looking for some kind of salvation. Sometimes it's actually been the simplest things I have reached for that have brought me home, to a home I didn't think existed, because, I was born in a Christian religion. I was baptized. I was a pastor's daughter. And I explored Christianity. I was lucky the Bible was never hoisted on me, and then I got to learn different religions. But when I was high school, one day I had a huge breakdown. I caught an assembly. I thought it was the end. And in 8th grade, I had taken a Patronus test, and I got in the magpie. And I had looked up what magpie symbolism meant at 13. And actually, when I was 13, I was very interested in astrology. I was interested in sun sign astrology and all of that stuff. And that teacher who I talked about, who was the pedo, gave me an article about a fucus, and it shut me off from that interest completely for a few years. But it was a curiosity that had been there when my Spanish teacher gave us like this sheet of like Aztec astrology. That is my first like memory of it. And I mean, that's not the astrology I practice, but I'm curious about astrology. I'm not somebody who's so into like what all these old dead white men say about it. I think it's something that can be felt, something that is alive, something that it's the map to your soul's seasons. And there are some spirits that feels weird to talk about that have been protecting me since birth. I should be dead. I got a rare illness that should have killed me. It took all my words. It took all of my memory of the life I had lived. Everything I had built, it took it all away from me. I had 18 months. And then I got it all back. But I think it ripped a hole in me. I think it ripped this hole in me. My grandmother said, like, to my parents, and then my parents told me that before my eyes, they were wide open. They were peaceful, they were joyful, and then afterwards there was this anxiety. And I always felt it guiding me. And it guided me away from people. I would have these people who I loved. And something in my body would say, leave. I don't know. And so I wait months watching as the patterns then unveiled themselves, hating myself in the meantime. I would go to this park and I would cry. I was at this park last night because I sat down to family dinner. My dad said something mean to me, and it hurt me. And he's apologized for it. We've talked about it, but it ripped open all those old fears and all those old patterns we have of hurt and anger and everything. And I went to the park. And you used to be able to sit in this spot, and you'd have to sit up high because you'd be scared of the water, like getting your books or getting your phone. And now you can walk into the lake because it's dried. And it's been 5 years. And that park saved me. Those spirits saved me. And they surprise me all the time. Because my mom has a new assistant. And this new assistant has the same name I created for my social media profile. Ishka. Because I learned it, I learned it over New Year's. It's the Gaelic word for water. And I was thinking, Ishka Callista. I was like, maybe that's a character, maybe that's an alter ego, maybe that's something, maybe that's my daughter's name. And something in me said, you can't give a name like that to a child with that kind of expectation on them. If you have an expectation for that name, you're the one who's meant to create with it. Don't give birth to something. Or, because I've always wanted to know what my children's names will be, have that list, and it just hasn't. And the reality of whether or not I'll have children is it's a question. It's a question. You know, I'm in Life Path 6, and if you do look up anything about Life Path 6, it's all about being a mother. And I have thought about being a mother since I was a little girl. Who I would be as a mother, what I would be as a mother, what kind of mothering I would do. I feel like my whole life I've been preparing to be a mother. But it's not. And to have a child and to love a child is a beautiful thing, but I can't function in this world yet. And I don't know what kind of world they'll be born into. I don't know if that's fair to bring somebody here right now. You know, I'll be shocked in some way if I make it to 40. I have Saturn ruling the 5th house, so it might be later. Or it might not be at all. But who knows? Sometimes I feel like I can feel their souls. And I love those souls. I would love that experience, but ever since I was a little girl, I have thought about motherhood and I've thought about divorce. And I'm raised... Anyway. I've thought about a lot of things for a very long time. And I tried to be different people. I tried to be normal. I tried. And when I felt like I was going crazy, and when I felt like I was absolutely insane and that there was nothing for me here, things like astrology would pop right back up. When I was a kid, I read Series of Unfortunate Events, and there was a tarot reader. I was one of like Count Olaf's disguises, but it was the 9th book. But something about that, because I'm interested in the future and I like interpreting. I do like interpreting. I'm an interpreter in many ways. Yeah, I think that's true. And I'm a journeyer. And I'm here now, sitting in this garden, talking to you, and this world exists because a little girl cried. That is magic to me. And something I have fought for in my life is the power of children. Is the power of children. Why do they torture the children if the children aren't powerful? Why do they abuse the children if the children aren't powerful? And I have been a chaotic wreck my whole life, and ashamed of that. Devastated, grieving, sobbing in class, you name it. I've been a public embarrassment. I've been a humiliation. And I've worn that around my neck like a 100-pound dumbbell. Annabelle. I've been an idiot. I've been mean. I've been cruel. I've been gossipy. I've been naive. I've been so many things. I've been so many flawed things, and I've been so many beautiful things too. And I love life. See her in the corner. I love Santa Muerte. I'm not a devotee. And I think about, how to enter that space, how to honor her with the color of my skin. But I love her. That's something I can say. I love Santa Muerte. I love her. I love what she represents. I'll show you this drawing I did of her. I did this on my birthday. But she represents death, yet there's something about her that is so soft, that is so beautiful, and it has been so wonderful to have her around. It's meant so much to me. Because thinking about death, thinking about dying, I know in some ways is a privilege. But I've thought about my own death for many years. Yeah, right, I considered suicide. And then I remember when I was 16, like my joke was, Only thing I would haunt my family about is if they buried me incorrectly. Because I don't want to be in a coffin. I want to return to this earth. You know, I want my body to be turned back into something the earth can use. Because my mortal soul, all of that stuff, I don't know, but the fact that we put people in coffins, that's never made sense to me. We're valuable to the earth. We're from the earth sustains us, yet we put ourselves in these boxes that lock us out of it. Like, I would rather just be thrown into a hole than put into a coffin. I hate coffins. But yeah, it's been a beautiful journey with her. And I can't really talk about how to worship her or any of that. I don't want to overstep the boundaries of that. But maybe someday I'll talk about what finding her was like, and what being with her is like, and what connecting with her is like, and what loving her is like. For me, I've always wanted something to love. I've always wanted someone to love, and I tried to put that onto other people. And it's been wonderful. And because of that, I've never also been able to experience my own love and the fullness of that and the depth of that. And so I had to be alone for some time, but now having her, it's a safe space to love and to give to. That is really beautiful and incredible. And she found me right before I got that job. There'd been signs of her, but she'd been around before that. Before I got that job, I was so scared about money. And I saw something of her. She showed up, and then I got the job. And I got the house sitting. I feel like she's been moving things and shifting things, and things have been changing. And I think it's in big part to her. And also these spirits, and like in the vein of the OA, some of you might think I'm absolutely crazy. And that would be your loss, because you're missing out on a great story. You're missing out on the truth. You're missing out. But my dad was back here, and my mom was back here with her assistant, and I was painting back here. My dad came to check on me, and he told me a few things that I still need to do. But as I was talking to him, I realized this all exists because of Lola's tears. This all exists right now because of Lola's tears. Yesterday, final story. On Friday, I decided to go to the art walk downtown Denver, the Santa Fe Art Walk. And I take the bus. Probably shouldn't share that, but I take the bus. And it's the same bus I took when I did acting classes in high school. I loved acting. Acting is also something that kept me alive. I loved it more than anything. Acting was the thing that I never procrastinated on. Always memorize my lines. I would do this acting camp. We'd have a week. I would get the lines down, do the character work down. Like, I could work like a dog for acting. Whole different conversation. I went downtown and my phone was at 15%, and I thought, fuck. But I thought, if I don't go now, I'm not going to go. I've had a few moments like that in my life. And when I have just gone, there's been some complications, but it's been worth it. It's been worth it. It's been worth it. So I went downtown, went to the Santa Fe Art Walk. I was on the bus. I did my meditations. I did this one where you imagine your feet, tubes coming from your feet into your earth, and it's from a Matt Oren book, and it has like, look, you imagine like chains and like an anchor going into the earth, and that's an electrical rod for everything in your body. So you send all of that in there. And then he has one where you close your eyes, and when you pull your energy in, it's in your heart, and then when you pull it out, it's out to people. So I was practicing that on the bus, because I was like, you can't be on your phone, because you're gonna need your phone to figure out how to get back. So I went downtown, and I had to get on 2 buses, and I was so overwhelmed by how many people there were. It was just streams of people, but I just walked among the crowd, back and forth. I just walked among the crowd. My bright pink hair, bright pink top, these purple pants, like, and my hiking shoes. But I heard on the bus get a tiger's eye, so I went to an Octavia Obscura, got a tiger's eye heart. It's the first thing I did. Then I was walking, I was feeling overwhelmed. I went into a used bookstore. I found a burlesque book. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that. I feel like burlesque is kind of me. Like naughty and revealing, but also like the body. I'm excited for that. And then I went to a mushroom tent. And that helped. That helped a lot. And it took away my anxiety. And it just, like, all the junk gone. I was just kind of a part of it. And I just, and then I went into some art exhibits. I went into the Muso Museum, and then this contemporary art museum, and then there was a girl doing like silks on an exhibit, and I saw a lot of beautiful things, but I just flowed with my energy. And then I went into Witch's Brew and bought like a protection thing and like a butterfly PT, and I left when I felt called to leave. And I memorized the bus route. I memorized the walk back and Lincoln. So I walked, and then the bus stop was the one I thought I was going to, not the one I ended up at, was the one I went to acting classes at as a kid. Same bus stop, so that's where I was going. So I walk through, I get up to Lincoln, back to like where kind of all the bus routes end, and my phone dies. But I know the area and I know where I need to walk. But I'm like, fuck, if I miss this bus, I won't be able to know if there's another bus coming. I walk up to 16th Street because I'm like, I can navigate 16th Street. And I'm taking the bus, and the bus is stopping so slow, and then an older gentleman comes on, and he's resting his arm against the chair, and it's like almost touching me. And I'm like, it's made me think about questions about space. I'm like, I don't want to intrude on his space. I don't want to make him feel unsafe. But I don't know how to analyze this. And I'm annoyed with the bus, and I'm not vibing in this environment anymore. I'm just going to get off. So I got off the bus, and they have all these screens, so I was able to find it. I just start walking, and like something in me is telling me to go faster. And as I'm walking, the bus comes right up next to me, and it was not the bus stop I thought. The bus comes up right up next to me. I get on the bus, and the guy says this was the last bus of the night. So it was a matter of seconds. It was maybe it was like a matter of probably 30 seconds changed everything that night. A matter of 30 seconds based on past decisions changed the timeline I was on fundamentally that night. Now, if I have family, so I probably could have called somebody. I probably could have asked somebody for a phone charger, something. But it would have been stressful. And when I was home and in the bus and in bed, I was just grateful. I was grateful. But, been kind of microdosing. And it's just brought up so much. But it has been incredibly helpful for me. And I'm realizing I'm going to finish up this painting tonight. I'm going to finish up this priming, and I'm going to wrap the brush up in paper. And then I'm going to wind down for bed so I can be ready for tomorrow. And I hope to see you guys and talk to you guys another day. Bye.